The International Criminal Court, ICC. Sounds boring, right? Like a very serious episode of Law & Order, but with subtitles. Except this court deals with the worst crimes imaginable: genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity. And they just issued an arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu, of course, says it's all bogus. He claims it's politically motivated. But the ICC doesn't just hand out arrest warrants like parking tickets. They issued this one for a reason. The ICC alleges that Netanyahu is responsible for war crimes in Gaza. Specifically, they're looking at the period following October 7, 2023. We're talking about potential crimes against humanity here, folks. The ICC doesn't mess around. They're accusing Netanyahu of turning Gaza into a humanitarian disaster zone. And they have evidence, or at least they did before certain things went offline. More on that later. So what happens when the ICC comes knocking with an arrest warrant? Well, for most countries it means cooperating with the court, handing over the accused, upholding international law. But Israel, under Netanyahu's leadership, has decided to play a different game. They're not cooperating. They're calling the ICC biased, they're crying foul, and they're turning to their old pal, the United States, for help. But here's the thing. Ignoring an arrest warrant from the ICC, that's a big deal. It undermines the whole system of international justice. It sends a message that powerful leaders can act with impunity, and that's a very dangerous precedent to set. But hey, who cares about international law when you've got powerful friends, right? Enter Donald Trump, stage right, with his signature blend of bluster and bravado. Trump, never one to miss an opportunity to flex his executive muscles, decided to intervene. And by intervene, I mean he threw a temper tantrum on Twitter and then slapped sanctions on the ICC, because nothing says we respect international law like punishing the people trying to uphold it. Trump's executive orders were basically a big middle finger to the ICC. He froze assets, imposed travel bans, and generally made life difficult for anyone associated with the court. His reasoning? The ICC was being unfair to Israel and the United States, because apparently investigating alleged war crimes is now considered unfair in the Trumpian lexicon. The global reaction to Trump's little outburst was not good. Imagine a room full of diplomats, usually the most reserved and polite people on the planet, collectively gasping in horror. That's pretty much what happened. Even America's closest allies, countries like Canada, Germany, and France, publicly condemned Trump's actions. They called it an attack on international law, a dangerous precedent, and a gift to dictators everywhere. Trump, of course, brushed off the criticism. He called the ICC a kangaroo court and doubled down on his support for Netanyahu. Because when you're facing accusations of war crimes, there's no better strategy than cozying up to a guy who thinks windmills cause cancer. Netanyahu, emboldened by Trump's unwavering and utterly baffling support, wasn't content with just dodging an arrest warrant. Oh no, he wanted more. He wanted revenge. So he sent his lobbyists to Washington with a clear mission: punish the ICC. And sadly, some American lawmakers were all too eager to oblige. Netanyahu's allies in Congress started pushing for even harsher sanctions against the ICC. They introduced bills, held hearings, and generally made a nuisance of themselves. They claimed that the ICC was biased against Israel, a threat to American sovereignty, and probably run by a cabal of lizard people. Okay, maybe not that last part, but you get the idea. And then there's the Hague Invasion Act. Yes, you heard that right. Back in 2002, at the height of the George W. Bush administration's "we'll invade whoever we want" phase, they passed a law called the Hague Invasion Act. This little gem of legislation basically authorizes the US military to invade The Hague, where the ICC is located, if they ever dare to detain an American citizen or a citizen of an allied country. So, yeah, it's not exactly subtle. Trump, never one to pass up an opportunity to threaten military action, dusted off the Hague Invasion Act and started waving it around like a drunk uncle at a wedding. He hinted that he might actually use it to protect Netanyahu from the ICC, because, you know, invading a sovereign nation to protect an alleged war criminal is totally a proportionate response. So what happens when a powerful country like the United States decides that international law is more like a suggestion than an actual rule? What happens when leaders like Trump and Netanyahu can ignore arrest warrants, undermine international courts, and threaten military action with impunity? Well, it's not pretty. The ICC was supposed to be a beacon of hope, a symbol that even the most powerful people in the world could be held accountable for their crimes. But Trump and Netanyahu's actions have dealt a serious blow to the court's legitimacy. They've shown the world that might makes right, that international law is only as strong as the countries willing to enforce it. And what about the victims? The people who have suffered unimaginable horrors at the hands of war criminals. What message does this send to them? That their pain doesn't matter? That justice is a luxury reserved for the powerful? It's a dangerous and disheartening message. The unraveling of international law is a slow and insidious process. It happens gradually, one executive order, one broken treaty, one ignored arrest warrant at a time, but the consequences are very real. It creates a world where the strong do as they please and the weak suffer in silence. It's a world that none of us should want to live in.